Hey guys, I'm in the shop this afternoon making some shelves for a set of living room built-ins that I'm making for the Martin family. We're making 16 of them for this set of built-ins. And so here's how we do it. All right, so we've got our plywood cut for the shelves. Again, that was 3/4 inch thick plywood. If you just put that up at that thickness, it's gonna look kind of rinky-dink. And so that's why we add like a front lip that makes that wood look a little bit thicker in that cabinet. Typically I'll do this about 1.5 inches thick, but there's so many shelves in this project. As I showed you the picture earlier, there's 16 of them. I didn't want it to look too fat, too busy. So I've actually downsized that a little bit to 1 inch and 1/16. And I'm cutting that out of 1x4 prime pine. So that shelf lip sizing was a little bit strategic. Counting the table saw, the kerf that it makes, I'll be able to yield 3 strips out of this board. So it's good use of product. The materials are crazy high right now. So as craftsmen, I think we're just trying to be as wise as we can about things. This will give us good yield and a good nice looking lip as well. I've used a piece of plywood, scrap plywood, just to make sure I have it dialed in. I always check that with my square. I don't trust the gauge on my saw. It seems to change by the week for whatever reason. So it's always good to test on a piece of scrap first. I'm gonna go ahead and rip this down. I will set up a finger joint board here to help me with that, and I'll pass these through and then I'll get to cutting them in lengths. My total length needed is 26.25 inches. That's why I went with a 1x12 board. And so I'll probably cut this in half to make it a little more manageable to use. And then I'll start ripping my strips. All right, so here we are at the miter saw station. I set up a stop block and it's banging out all these strips a lot easier, but also a lot more precise. So highly recommend setting up some of a similar system where you have a track, and that'll help you a lot. Here's our miter saw station. You can see we've got a dust collection hood, and we've got a kind of a scoop connected to the back. So I get the ambient dust collection coming out the back of the miter saw station, and we have the at the saw dust collection as well. This station's worked out great for us. Okay, so we got all of our shelf strip lips ripped and cut to length, and they're gonna go in the front of these shelves like so. You can see there's a small reveal on the top and bottom of the shelf to give it a nice finished look, and it gives it a much more thick look than 3/4 inch plywood. Because when you fully assemble these shelves, it's really difficult to get this edge without also marring the plywood in your sanding processes. I'm gonna go ahead and pre-sand those. So I'm gonna sand all 4 sides of this to 180, and then I'm gonna use my sander and just put a very small radius on each corner just to soften it up a little bit, and then I'll do a final sanding after that 180 grit round. I'll do a final sanding with 240 Festool sandpaper, which is a nice contoured foam back paper, which makes doing contour work like radiuses a breeze. I'll blow everything off and then I'll start assembling it. A couple things, I use Festool for all of our sanders. They're awesome. The braces were kind of expensive when I first started getting these. You had to get Festool brand because they had no aftermarket options. At first, the first competitor to come on the scene was this Serious Grit stuff that I found on Amazon, which at that point only came in the 8-hole 5-inch model. So we have a 5-inch sander, so that was awesome. I was able to save some money on that sander, but they didn't quite yet have the 6-inch Jetstream 2 hole pattern available with the Serious Grit brand on Amazon, but just recently they came out with it, which is awesome. So it's like half the price of the Festool abrasives. I would never sacrifice quality for our clients. I honestly feel like this is as good or better than the Festool, and so I wanted to share that with you guys. Really like this Serious Grit. I have no sponsorship with them whatsoever, or any sponsors with anybody. So I'm just trying to save you guys some money and help you to get a great product in this crazy economy. Hope that helps. Okay guys, so out of the 16 shelves that we need to get assembled for this project, I've completed 15 of those. They're behind me here, and I got my last shelf piece and shelf lip to assemble to complete the 16, so I want to walk you through that process. Before I do that, I do want to give you a little bit of an idea about how long I've been working since my last cut there on the camera. I've been working away from camera for about 2 hours from the time that I had all these sanded to the time that I have all these assembled. And so it does take some time. Part of that time did include also going through all the different pieces of plywood and filling any kind of flaws that I had in those with spackle. It's not uncommon to have an A side of your plywood and like a B or a C side. I would say that over the last year and a half, with some of the issues we've been having with supplies, one of those has been kind of a degrading quality of the back side of the plywood. So I had to do a lot of filling. So I got all those filled. I'm gonna go ahead and start this assembly. Just a couple of things that are in front of me. I've got some spackle, I've got some glue. I do have a lead acid brush I'm gonna use to spread the glue more evenly so it doesn't squeeze out quite as much. Paper towels, a water bottle to spray some water to wipe off glue. I've got this little jig, which is basically 2 painter sticks taped together. You'll see what I use that for in a second. I'm using a Milwaukee Fuel battery powered brad nailer, and I'm using 1.25" brads. And basically, you know, because you're gluing against plywood, glue alone is not going to be enough to hold this strip together. You probably could painter's tape it and maybe have a decent bond, but I wouldn't trust it alone since it is kind of a rough edge of plywood to joint, you know, to that perfectly without ever coming off. That's why I added the fastener. Likewise, I wouldn't trust the fastener alone. To hold this strip, I would want to add glue to it. We have done that in the past with mixed results. So it's always best to have both the glue and the brads, in my opinion, for how I'm constructing these types of shells, which I think a lot of people are building them the same way. So probably one of the biggest dangers in this assembly process is when you're going to nail in, you want to make sure that you're nailing as straight as possible. And that's one of the reasons I only use 1.25" nails, because even with those, it's hard to shoot straight where they won't want to curve out every now and again. 2-inch nails, it's an overkill and they're going to be popping out on you a bunch. Anything less than 1.25" I don't think is long enough. So 1.25" is good. If it ever does want to curl out on you, occasionally that happens. I would probably say 1 out of every 10 fires, maybe even less frequent than that. I just go ahead and grind that down with the grinder to its flush, and then I pound it in below the surface with a punch, and then I fill that with spackle. Not a big deal, it's paint grade. When you're doing stain grade though, it gets kind of dicey. You just gotta really focus on that angle of that brad nailer. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by determining which the top side of the shelf. In this case, I had a flaw on the bottom, so I know that's the bottom, so this is my top. I'm gonna go ahead and put a bead of glue across the top edge. A very thin bead, you don't need a lot of glue. Just enough that I could spread it with this lead acid brush and get an even coat. And the reason I spread it here is because if I just went straight to brad nailing on that strip to that little bead of glue I just put, it's gonna ooze out and just be all over the place. So I am gonna wipe it afterwards still, but this will minimize some of that glue squeeze out. The next thing is, I know this is my top side, so I'm gonna put my jig right here to give me an even reveal. And I'm going to determine what's the best side of this to go outward. I'm just looking at the different parts of that board. What's the smoothest face? Both are pretty good, but that's the better side. And which is the better side to go up? I see a finger joint right here. So the paint may show that. This one has a finger joint, but it's a little better filled by the primer. So that's going to be my upside, okay? I'm going to go ahead and put that there. I'm going to reach over to my jig, and I'm wanting this 2 popsicle or 2 painter sticks reveal to be on the top. And by doing so, it leaves about a small, maybe like 1/16 inch reveal on the bottom. I want that higher reveal on the top. One, I like it better aesthetically, but also it gives me a nice place to caulk against. I can caulk and still have reveal after the caulk. If the reveal were only a 1/16 inch reveal, then the caulk would probably fill the whole thing. You'll see that better later when you see the finished product. So I'm making sure I'm flush here, and I'm flush on the side. I'm gonna get my fingers out the way as much as possible. I'm going to come in about 2 inches, shoot a brad, and hope it doesn't curl. It doesn't. That's good. Okay, now I'm going to come over to the other side and do the same thing. You can see this thing's just moving back and forth. That's good. Go ahead and flush it up with the painter sticks on the top. I can feel that's even. Checking that that's even as well. If it wasn't, I would adjust it the best I can right now. And then go ahead and shoot. Then I'm going to go to the middle and shoot a 3rd nail. Now you may have some bend in your plywood and or your strip, so this is the time to correct that. That's going to make sure you have a really straight shelf. If you don't correct this and you just shoot it and don't use your jig, you risk having a twisted or bowed shelf. That's all I'm going to use the jig for. I'm going to fill in the 2nd and the 4th brad nail just manually without the jig, because that shelf support's not going to move. Again, I'm really focusing on keeping the brad nailer as straight as possible. Thankfully, I didn't go in or out on the brad nails. That's always a plus. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and wipe down the lips just to make sure I don't have any glue. I do have a little bit, but because I use a lead acid brush, it's minimal. And that's all cleaned up. A lot of times our team will forget to do this stuff, and then we've got this kind of crust of glue that's very difficult to get off at that point. So you want to try to get it now. That's all done. You can see I got my brad nail holes, pretty small, low profile holes. I like to use, again, for paint grade projects, I like to use spackle. It dries quickly, it is hard enough to handle the knead, and it's easier to apply than wood filler in my opinion. And I like this pink stuff because I can tell when it's ready to be sanded because it dries white. And so that's the assembly. That's pretty much all there is to it, but it does take time. And you can see I've got this kind of meteor looking shelf. I've got a nice 1/4 inch reveal on the top. I'm gonna put some caulk in that, just run some caulk, slide it real quick with a wet finger one time. It's gonna fill in that 1/4 inch reveal nicely, but it's not gonna fill all of that reveal. We'll still have more wood on top of the caulk. If I had done a 16th reveal on the top like this, it would have been difficult to fill it with caulk and not have the caulk kind of steal on the show, so to speak. So I only caulk the top of the shelves. I don't caulk the bottom. I feel like that's an overkill. And usually if you're looking at it from vantage point, people aren't going to be able to see that anyway, even on the highest shelf. But you want to make sure that lower shelf does look good. It is nice and caulked. So I'm going to work off camera, or talk off camera henceforth for the rest of this, and kind of take you guys through what the sanding process looks like. And after I sand, I'll blow everything off and caulk it. And then I'm going to put hooks. I've got a hanging rack, and you can see here at the end, my hanging rack has hooks every 6 inches. So I'll drill a hole here, and I drill a hole here, put hooks on them, hang it on the shelf, and that way I can spray both sides of this shelf at the same time. That hanging rack is awesome. You can see Chris is doing all the final sand. All the spackle came out super smooth. All that'll paint nice. You won't even be able to see those brad nail holes. And after this, the next step's gonna be putting hooks on them. I'm gonna put 2 hooks on each end, and then we'll finish by caulking that upper lip. And we'll be ready for paint. All right, guys, everything is wrapped up with these cabinets and shelves. They're ready for delivery, and everything went great. Paint laid down nice and smooth, and just want to give you guys an idea of how the finished result came out. You can see all of our brad nail holes spackled and painted very well. Everything has a very nice, smooth finish. All right, guys, this was a fun project. Everything came out great. Hope you guys got a lot out of the video. If you got any questions, drop them below. Please, if you like what you saw, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Click the bell so you get all the notifications for future videos. And thanks so much for watching along, and God bless.